Britain has always been a place of tradition. Milk rounds, postal routes, habits that run deeper than memory, and some traditions choose their own keepers. Tonight we visit a quiet estate in Stamford, Lincolnshire. The houses are tired, the gardens overgrown, and one very old route is still running on schedule.
Aidan Fletcher had never wanted to house sit for his great-aunt Maureen, but guilt has a way of making decisions for you. She'd fallen down her front steps, the same steps she'd climbed every day since moving to Ferndale Close in 1962. Now she was recuperating in hospital and someone needed to keep an eye on number 47. The house hadn't changed since Aidan's childhood visits. Same floral carpet that caught your toe. Same electric fire with one bar that flickered like a dying candle. Same wireless radio that hadn't worked since the miners' strike but stayed plugged in out of habit. Aunt Maureen belonged to that generation that kept everything, including routines that had outlived their purpose. It was on his third morning that Aidan noticed the milk bottle. Glass, frosted white with a thin cardboard cap. The kind his grandmother had described but which he'd never actually seen. It sat on the doorstep like it had always belonged there, beaded with condensation despite the October chill. He brought it inside, assuming it was a neighbour's kindness. The estate was full of pensioners who remembered when people looked after each other. Perhaps they'd mistaken him for Maureen. But when he asked Mrs. Chen next door, she looked puzzled. When had she last seen a milkman? Not since the corner shop started doing deliveries. Surely, that was 20 years ago. The bottle appeared again the next morning, and the next. Always before sunrise, always cold, always silent. Aidan tried staying awake one night, positioning himself by the front window with instant coffee and his phone's torch. He'd catch whoever was playing this game, but dawn came with heavy eyes and an aching neck, and still another bottle waited on the step. This time he examined it properly. No brand marking, no dairy label, just smooth glass and that peculiar cardboard cap, slightly yellowed at the edges. He opened it and sniffed, not sour exactly, but not fresh either. There was something else underneath, something that reminded him of school dinners and hospital corridors, of old people's houses on rainy afternoons. The taste was worse. It coated his tongue with memories that weren't his own, ration books and bomb shelters, children playing in rubble, the sound of someone crying behind thin walls. He poured the rest down the sink, watching the white liquid spiral away. For a moment the water ran cloudy, as if something thicker than milk had been hiding inside. That night he dreamed of the estate in black and white. Morning fog rolled between the houses like smoke from a distant fire. Every doorstep held bottles. Some houses had 3 or 4 lined up like soldiers. But number 47 stood empty-stepped and somehow shameful, like a house that had forgotten to pay its debts. He woke to the sound of whistling. An old tune drifted up to him through the morning mist. Aidan crept to the window and peered through the net curtains, Maureen's curtains, which she'd probably hung in the 70s and never thought to replace. Down the street he could see a figure. White coat, peaked cap, moving with the steady rhythm of someone who'd done the same job every morning for 40 years. The man carried a crate, though Aidan couldn't see what was in it. The whistling stopped. The figure turned. Too far to see his face, but Aidan felt those eyes on him like a weight. The man raised one hand, not waving, but pointing, accusing. Then he stepped behind the electric milk float and vanished. Aidan stayed away from the window after that, but he couldn't stop checking the doorstep. The bottle appeared every morning without fail, each one somehow more wrong than the last. The glass felt too warm. The milk inside had begun to separate, forming patterns that looked almost like faces. He called the council, trying to sound casual. Did anyone else on Ferndale Close receive doorstep deliveries? The woman on the phone laughed. Doorstep milk? What was this, 1960? Though now she mentioned it, there had been complaints. Something about early morning disturbances. singing in the streets before dawn. She paused when he gave her the address. Best to stay indoors after dark, she advised. Some of those old estates got strange ideas about themselves. The dreams came every night after that, not of the estate in black and white, but of doors opening one by one, faces appearing in windows, familiar faces, though Aidan had never seen them before. Old people in dressing gowns and carpet slippers stepping onto their doorsteps with their arms outstretched, waiting. On the 7th morning, Aidan didn't wake up naturally. Something had roused him, a sound like bottles clinking together, but closer than the doorstep, closer than the front garden. The sound was coming from inside the house. He found his way to the kitchen, following the gentle tinkling. The fridge door stood open, and inside, bottles. Dozens of them stacked in neat rows where Maureen's leftovers used to live. The light inside had changed too, casting everything in sepia tones like an old photograph. One bottle sat on the kitchen table, opened, with a note beside it written in spidery handwriting. For the new tenant. Welcome to the round. That's when he heard the faint whistling again. Aidan looked out the kitchen window and saw himself walking down Ferndale Close, white coat hanging loose on his thin frame, cap pulled low over his eyes. In his hands, a crate full of bottles that caught the morning light, like promises he couldn't remember making. Behind him, every door on the street stood open, doors that had been closed for decades, doors of houses where the occupants had died years ago. But they were occupied now, and in each doorway someone waited with empty hands and grateful smiles. Faces he recognised from old photographs on Maureen's mantelpiece, neighbours who'd moved away, children who'd grown old and moved on. All of them waiting for their delivery, waiting for him. He was whistling as he walked, the same tune he'd heard that first morning, the tune that seemed to know his throat better than his own voice. His feet found the rhythm without thought, following a route mapped in muscle memory that wasn't his. The crate never grew lighter, no matter how many bottles he delivered. And the song would never end, because some duties pass from one carrier to the next, and some rounds have been running so long, they've worn grooves in time itself. Aidan Fletcher had become the milkman of Ferndale Close, and this delivery round would never end.
If you hear clinking in the early hours, don't open your door, don't peek through the curtain, and whatever you do, don't drink the milk.